All right, thank you. So as you mentioned, a little bit about my background. I do work at Akamai Technologies, and there mostly what I focus on in my day-to-day job is Darknet and cybercrime research. I do security incident response both for our customers and for internal incidents. We run a very large content delivery network, so you can imagine some of the internet-wide incidents that we have to deal with. Last week was a lot of fun with Drown. And so I also do a lot of security training and workshops, both internally and on the side for things like CISP advancement and other things like that. So a little bit about the context of what we're going to be talking about. The main realms we're going to be looking at in order here are carding, that's credit card fraud, account hijacking and how that's used in the cybercrime ecosystem, identity fraud, and then e-laundering. So what I am talking about in terms of threat actors in these spaces are carders and low to mid-level ID fraudsters. What I am specifically not talking about are state-backed actors or major organized crime groups. They have a very different set of resources, of targets and drivers, and so the defenses there are going to be different as well as the ways in which they do what they do. In terms of currency that greases these cybercrime wheels, we're going to be talking a little bit about cryptocurrency, mostly Bitcoin. But in these ecosystems, we also see the use of Dash. Some of you might know this by its former name as Darkcoin. Also, Litecoin is heavily involved. In the Eastern European bloc, that's the former Soviet bloc, perfect money is used a lot, as is OKPay and web money. There is also a lot of demand in Asia and in the Americas for exchanges done with gift cards. Xbox Live gift cards, Amazon.com, and Walmart gift cards. These are pretty much as good as cash in a lot of these underground economies. So I'm talking about why I think it's important to look at these particular areas. In Canada, in the past 5 years, ID theft has tripled. From 2010 to 2014, ID fraud has jumped by 42%. In the U.S. in 2014 alone, there was $16 billion worth of ID fraud perpetrated against about 12.7 million consumers. In the U.S., there is a new ID fraud victim every 2 seconds. Now, the first circle of hell that we're going to talk about here is carding. You know what? I want to give my talk a little more legitimacy. So instead of talking about circles, we'll say this is the first magic quadrant, carding. It's common, and it doesn't cost very much in terms of time and resources to get into. It is literally child's play. Now, these are all people who are showing off what they've gotten out of carding. And in the bottom left, you'll see somebody from the UK, and the other 3 pictures are people from South America. All of these people have posted these things on social media, and they have all been caught and put in jail. So how do people get your credit card information? Well, one of the big ways lately has been through credit card skimming. Skimmers can be attached to things like gas pumps. There have been ones attached to Redbox. Redbox was really good in responding to this, actually, and that they've added on their new models of the Redbox machines a huge block of metal right above the card skimmer, so you can't actually add another one on top of it, which kudos to Redbox for responding to that. Handheld skimmers are also really popular. Typically, those will be used by somebody that's in the service or food industry, and they'll have it, and they go take your card to pay for your meal. They'll put their handheld skimmer right underneath the actual point-of-sale system and just skim your card through both at the same time. And those can just fit right in your pocket. There are also skimmers that have been popping up on when you have an enclosed ATM, and you have to put your card in to actually open the door to get into the ATM. We've been finding skimmers on the outside where you actually put your card in to open the door. So watch out for that. It is 2016, but SQL injection is still very much alive, and it is a way that a lot of credit card information is gotten from usually small web shops. And sort of in the same vein, small mom and pop stores that do payment processing either at the end of the night or the end of the week. A lot of times they can keep these in spreadsheets. They can keep the information in CSV or text files on the manager's computer. So once that computer gets popped, then they have access to all of that information. Another way is through the point-of-sale systems themselves. I'm sure you heard about this through Home Depot and Target, but it doesn't have to be such a concerted effort of a group going through the HVAC system and all of that. Since a lot of point-of-sale systems, I'm sure you've seen when you go to buy something at a store, at the register, they've got all these open ports on the back of the machine that does the payment processing. So that's definitely available to anybody who wants to just walk up and plug something in. Another way that this is done is there's an employee that works there that you pay them after hours to go ahead and install malicious software onto the point-of-sale system. But if you don't want to go through all of this hacking and learning SQL and getting malware to put on a point-of-sale system, you can just go on the Darknet and buy some credit cards. So these prices are from yesterday. It's Italian, Australian, and Portuguese credit cards for $5 a pop. The US credit cards tend to be a lot cheaper. And one of the underground markets have so many credit cards that they need to offload that they created an automatic store for it. You can see here at the bottom, you can search for credit cards by the bin, by the bank that they are. You can search specifically by the city, state, and zip. You can tell them, I want a social security number or a date of birth included with the credit card information. Those cost a little more, but then you're able to bypass some extra security checks. You can also say, I want the birth year to be between this or this because it looks like how old I am, so I'm more likely to not get asked for more identification. You can also specify the type of card and the credit level. So what do they do with these credit cards? One of the cash-out techniques is buying tangible goods, usually luxury items or electronics, and then they can take those goods and then resell them. They usually use systems like Wallapop, Garage Sale. Craigslist is still heavily used. If you see a really good deal on Craigslist, think twice. Also, Backpage.com is used for this. But you don't necessarily have to sell it through one of these systems and meet somebody in person. A lot of carders have set up their own web shops. This is both ClearNet and on Tor or I2P. They'll set up a shop for heavily discounted electronics, and you buy it, and then they'll card it for you from the manufacturer and then ship it to you. Another way to make money here, buying gift cards and then selling them on the Darknet for a discount. We'll talk more about the other side of that later on. So there are a number of problems inherent in dealing with stolen tangible goods. You're having to receive and send these goods in some manner, so you're potentially exposing your home or business address. Also, if you want to deal with a P.O. box, so you're not using your personal address, you still have to provide ID, there are cameras in there, and then you have to meet employees face-to-face. Also, if you're going to use something called an abandoned drop, this is where somebody goes out of town and use their address, or it's a recently abandoned business or house. Then you can go ahead and have things delivered there and then go pick it up. But there are some issues with that. You don't know if the Postal Service is actually going to deliver to those addresses. You don't know if there's mail forwarding set up, so your packages get routed somewhere else. So instead, you can use actual people with actual addresses and have them work at home for you. And then you can ship stuff to them, and then they can reship it somewhere else. And these mules, you do have to worry about them stealing from you. Since there's a major law enforcement crackdown right now on the reshipping scams, you really have to worry about them flipping on you to the cops. And throughout all of this, what you have to worry about are controlled deliveries. This is where an officer of the law pretends to be a postal carrier, goes to take a good that they know has been bought with stolen credentials, and they go to the person who it's supposed to be shipped to, they have them sign, and then they slap on the cuffs. So one cute trick I saw to not deal with any of the tangible goods themselves is something called triangulation fraud. And this is where an unsuspecting customer will go on a site like eBay or something like that, see a good that they want, and purchase it. Now they send their order with the payment through the purchasing system to the fraudulent seller. Now the seller doesn't actually have these goods in stock. they're just selling a picture pretty much online. And what they do once they get the order in is they'll take stolen credit card information and then actually order that item and then have it shipped to the person who bought it. Now, the person who is the customer, it looks legitimate to them because they're getting the good that they said they wanted online. Now, when the cops come knocking, guess who they go after first? The unsuspecting customer. The fraudulent seller didn't actually touch the good in any way. But of course, they can still be traced through the eBay or whatever the sales system was. So another way to not have to deal with any of those tangible goods is to just deal in digital goods. A lot of these digital goods can be found in rewards programs accounts. These are things like airline accounts, retail, travel, hospitality. When you go to a hotel, they ask you to sign up for a membership for their rewards programs. So through these systems, you can get things like vouchers for goods or for stays. These are easily transferable. And thanks to a series of class action lawsuits, they often do not expire. E-gift cards, they're easily transferable as well. They're typically good as cash, and there's many outlets, like legitimate outlets, to resell them. So in order to get access to these accounts and these goods, we'll move to our second magic quadrant. This is account hijacking. Now, this is a little more uncommon. It costs a little more in terms of resource, time, and know-how. And some of the ways that these accounts are hijacked are, through malware. A system gets infected, and the owner of the account, whoever's watching on the other side of that malware or that remote access, can go in and see this is the website that they're at, this is what they're typing in, capture the info from the keyboard, dump all the credentials from their browser because browsers are terrible at keeping those safe. Another way that it could be done is through basic phishing. You can pose as the rewards account program and say, hey, your account has been hacked. I need you to go ahead and verify that you are the owner of the account. Give me all of this information that gives me access to your account. And people fall for that all the time. Especially for airline rewards accounts, a lot of them will just use 4-digit PINs, which is terrible, but they're very, very prone to brute force attacks. And the way that they get under the radar for the brute force attacks is they'll have a series, you can see here that third column, they have a series of proxies that they roll through while they're trying to brute force the login. Now, the one that we've been seeing the most lately are account checkers. This is a web-based checker, but they also have offline versions. And what you do for these account checkers is you put in the username or email address and then the password, and you just fill out that list of a whole bunch of login information. And then on the far right, you can put your proxy information. And then what it'll do is it'll test all of these credentials against a number of different websites to see which ones you get access to. So where are you getting all of these credentials? Well, there's been so many breaches and leaks lately that you can just use the information from Adult Friend Finder, from the MySpy database dump, from the MIT dumps. All of those have a series of credentials. But nobody here uses the same login credentials across multiple websites, right? So typically what we were seeing with these checker attacks is they wouldn't just focus on one industry. They'd hit customers at the same time across multiple industries, usually focusing on retail, travel, and hospitality, though we have lately seen them branch out a little more. And the type of traffic that we see is coming from different botnets, and they're rolling through multiple proxies. Sometimes they're public proxies, sometimes they're private. We saw a lot of IPs from Hola VPN. Thanks. A lot of IPs from the Mac botnet. A lot of shared hosting IPs. Now, these are where somebody has a web server and it's either been compromised or the hosting service has been bought using stolen credentials. Also, routers. Lots and lots of home routers we've seen doing these account checker attacks. And this is because a lot of router manufacturers will ship out routers that have hard-coded backdoors or hard-coded, well, they're not backdoors. They're things so their service people can get in and fix your problems, right? But they also have, hard-coded admin login credentials that you can't actually change without changing the firmware. So what we saw with these account checker gangs, and what I'm talking about is just within the past year, We would see them run about 12 hours straight and then suddenly drop off. And these 12-hour blocks we found were not matching up with typical US work hours. So that's one data point. It doesn't tell you who it was, but it's one data point. We found that they adapted quickly to geo blocks, and they adapted very quickly to us just serving them 403 errors. So the things that we put in place that we found were semi-effective were blacklisting whole IP blocks, and then also putting in stricter rate controls on the login pages themselves. And then since a lot of these automated checker programs don't do a very good job of having refer information filled out all the way, we were also checking for valid refers, which helped block a lot of that traffic as well. Now, they were able to sort of pivot their tactics and get around these things. So we had to go to the next level. And we saw some of the super effective methods for stopping them were adding additional login info requirements, like the last name or the street address or something like that. And since they had already set up their systems to just look at username and password, we were able to foil a lot of the automation there. Also, we found a lot of the mobile and API login logic was not nearly as strict as the browser-based logins. So those were definitely being exploited and hit. So updating those made a big difference. We also, funnily enough, found a whole bunch of legacy login paths that were like dev paths or old paths that were never nuked. And half the time, the customers didn't even know that these paths still exist. So that was cute. We also found that instead of just blocking their request, so they switched to another proxy or another VPN IP, then we could TARP hit them or long route their traffic and just make it really, really slow for every single one of their requests. We made sure it didn't time out, but it would just take a very, very long time for them to do even one check of an account. And then at the end of that, what we would do is, even if the account information was not correct, we would send them to a fake "you've been logged in" page, so they would think the credentials were correct and then go to the next set of credentials. Once they started getting really frustrated with these methods, we saw them really drop off. So after seeing all this activity for people trying to get to digital goods, I wanted to see what the marketplace looked like. So I decided to first take a look at the Darknet Tor Markets, the onion router markets. And I wanted to make sure that the markets that I looked at had really good activity, they had good uptimes, greater than 95%. I wanted to also make sure that they were popular. So I only looked at the markets that had Google search imprints greater than 60,000 and Google keywords greater than 100. That led me to look at arguably the top 3 Tor markets right now: Alphabay, Dream Market, and Nucleus Market. And just doing a cursory check of these markets, I found that they did indeed have some of these digital goods on offer. Vouchers for restaurants, for spas were there. Vouchers for transportation, in this case, trains in the UK. And these were all at a heavy discount, of course. E-gift cards, Home Shopping Network, Walmart gift cards, and the gift card that I saw like far and above all the others were Whole Foods Market gift cards, which was interesting. So I guess the hackers like to eat well. There were also a lot of digital points for sale, lots of GameStop points, and then, of course, air miles for sale. So once I saw those sort of goods were actually for sale, I wanted to get some hard numbers on what the market numbers looked like. So when I did an overall view of these markets, in terms of digital goods for sale, these are accounts, malware, e-gift cards, things like that. There were 14,183 separate listings across these 3 markets. For fraud-related goods, these are credit card numbers, bank drops, packets of personally identifiable information, 15,426 separate offerings. So for the rewards accounts themselves and buying and purchasing the login information, now when I say rewards accounts, these are where the posting to purchase the account actually says this account has a points balance, this account has a credit card attached, things like that. I saw 20 different listings across 7 unique vendors, resulting in 2,014 confirmed sales. Now, for the things that you get out of these accounts, for vouchers and e-gift cards, there were 54 separate listings across 13 unique vendors, resulting in 3,136 sales. For rewards points, We saw 3 listings across only 3 unique vendors, but it was a total of 698 sales. It looks like they're really cornering the market on the points. Air miles, though, I only saw 4 listings across 4 vendors and only 100 sales, and they were all of those 100 sales were only for 2 different airlines. Now, what's going on here? I went through reviewing the policies of a bunch of different airlines and found that within the past few years, the airlines have really been cracking down on this type of fraud and really been ratcheting down what the requirements are for transferring points between accounts. And a lot of times they require there to be proof of a life upset, or it has to be somebody who you're related to, or all these hoops that you have to jump through. And criminals are typically looking for the quick buck or the low-hanging fruit, so they just won't bother with it. Now, the section of this market that really blew my mind were there were a whole bunch of personal criminal travel agents. Now, what these guys would do is they would put on an offering for, they would book your flights, they would book your rental car, they would get your hotel room, they could set up a cruise for you, and it seemed to be like really profitable for them because there was a lot of them, and the reviews for these services were like off the charts rave reviews. So I saw 93 general listings for these travel agents, 94 custom orders for travel, 31 different vendors offering these services, totaling in 4,808 individual confirmed sales. And like I said, almost every single one was a rave review saying, I got exactly what they wanted, and my travel was amazing. So I'll give you an idea about these numbers in context of time. So this was across 10 months, I gathered this data, and it was looking at only 3 of the markets out there. So across 10 months in only 3 markets, there were 10,756 individual sales of stolen rewards-related goods. I'd say there's a large enough market. So there are some bonuses to getting these rewards accounts. A lot of times, because people don't want to have to enter in their credit card number every single time, they'll save their credit card information to their account. So when somebody pops that account, they can use that credit card information to buy other stuff. There's also personal information in these accounts, things like addresses, phone numbers, email addresses, things like that. There's also a lot of cross-program fraud available because what will happen is rewards networks will hook up with one another so that you can use an account on one to buy goods from another. So they would be able to, even though they didn't pop this airline, they were able to, through this hotel, buy airline points. So when you're done with all of this, you got all the goods out of it that you want, you've sold all of the points that you bought, you can then sell the account itself. You can see there's PSN accounts for sale, GameStop logins, and here you see it actually says that, hey, look, there's a credit card attached and there are points on the balance. Crunchyroll lifetime accounts, Burberry, J.Crew, Musician's Friend. So this is just a very small sampling of all the accounts available. All right, so these guys have Bitcoin now, right? But how do they actually get to cash? Well, another huge section of this underground economy are guides to how to cash out. Most of the guides will start by telling you, use a Bitcoin tumbler. Now, what a Bitcoin tumbler does is it takes your Bitcoins and a lot of other people's Bitcoins and mixes them all together and then sends you cleaner Bitcoins that have been mixed with a bunch of other people to obfuscate the trail of the money. Now, if you're a decent forensics person that knows how to use the blockchain, you can trace that pretty easily. So what a lot of these guides say to do is to make a whole bunch of small transactions staggered over time to a number of different tumblers and then to different wallets. And that'll make it harder. Now, there are some tools out there for doing Bitcoin transaction analysis and tracing. One of them is actually offered by blockchain.info. And for us 13-year-old middle school boys, it's horribly named. It's taint analysis. So be careful talking about that in the work environment. Like, yo, Gary, give me your Bitcoin address so I can analyze your taint. So what this does is it looks at the amount of activity between different wallets and then starts to build relationship models for you. And that's really useful for looking at transactions over time between wallets. Another really useful tool here, Block Seeker. This has a really nice visual GUI, and it allows you to zoom in and move around and click on different transfer parts. This is actually the Silk Road auction for the Bitcoins gotten from DPR and the Silk Road by the feds. And you can see Tim Draper bought a whole bunch of them as well as some other people. And what this site does is it takes wallets, takes a whole bunch of open source intelligence information, and then information from their partners to actually start labeling wallets with who they think owns it, which is really useful.
Let's use this one.
Somebody didn't like me telling their secrets. I did. That was the first thing I did. All right, we're back. All right, so in order to actually get to cash through these now cleaner Bitcoins, you're going to have to move into the next magic quadrant, the next circle of hell, ID theft. So ID theft is more uncommon, and it definitely takes more in terms of resources, time, and know-how. But luckily, since 2005, there have been about 5,700 breaches of personal information, including 855 million unencrypted records involving people's personal information. So now there's lots of stuff on the market. So why do you need this information? Well, a lot of, especially financial services, but a lot of services, they rely on something called knowledge-based authentication. This is you proving that you are who you say you are by virtue of knowing something that somebody else might not know. Yeah. So you need this sort of information to reset a verified by Visa code or a MasterCard secure code. When you try to access an account that's pre-existing and you want to answer security questions, this is the type of information you need. When you're going to set up a financial services account, a lot of times they'll ask you for information about your credit history. They'll ask for past phone numbers, past addresses that you've lived at, what your national ID number is, what your SSN is, or your passport number. So examples of services that ask for this, Coinbase, Circle, and Zappo are arguably the 3 largest Bitcoin exchanges. And they all follow the anti-money laundering and know your customer laws, which means that they not only ask you for your social or your passport, but they also ask you for additional information that you're supposed to know. Other money-involved services like this, PayPal, Skrill, some of you might know that as money bookers, Google Wallet, also Stripe, Square, and eBay, if you're going to set up a seller account, require additional information. If you're going to wire funds, RIA, Western Union, MoneyGram, they require additional information about your identity as well. Luckily, you can go back to the darknet market and buy something called FULLZ, F-U-L-L-Z. And these are packets of personal information about somebody, somebody who you're going to take on as an outside skin, and it gives you information about their emails, addresses, their passwords, full name, including mother's maiden name, if applicable, date of birth, age, history of addresses, billing, telephone, and also, interestingly enough, their IP address, location, user agent, browser, and platform. Now, why would you need that? Well, it turns out a lot of financial service accounts are starting to fingerprint people when they log in. And what they do is they look for anomalous behavior to see if this person's using a completely different machine or browser, or they're coming from a completely different geo. I better flag this and lock the account. But if you have all this information, you can emulate all of that to look like the person is logging in the same as they always log in. Now, once you are setting up an account or trying to transfer funds, they might ask you for additional verification. You can also buy that stuff on the darknet. Customized bank statements, passport ID scans that have been doctored to your whatever you want. driver's license scans. You can also get custom gas bills or power bills if you have to show that. So a lot of times, cybercriminals see it's worth the extra money and effort to go through ID theft because, well, credit card numbers are easily burned and replaced. Also, having this identity allows you to have longer-term schemes and more different types of fraud, as well as complementary fraud. It allows typically for bigger payouts, and it has a built-in scapegoat, the person whose identity you're using. Now, if you're a cybercriminal and you have to actually get a physical ID card for some reason, you don't actually have to go back to the darknet to buy that. You can just get it from Reddit. This is a very funny subreddit. I suggest you all go look and read. It's mostly high school kids that are trying to buy booze, so it's pretty funny. So some of the types of fraud that you can perpetrate with these IDs. Loan fraud, you can take out personal or business loans. You can take out student loans. There are plenty of guides for that. There are also, if the person whose identity you have owns land or property or a house, there's a lot of mortgage and title fraud that you can use to transfer the title over to another entity. This is a really big problem in Canada right now. There are also cash advances that you can get on credit, and there are loan services where you don't have to go in person. You don't even have to talk to somebody on the phone. You could just do it completely all online, sometimes just through chat. That's terrible. Also, tax fraud. Somebody said IRS before. So, tax refund interception. You file for a refund as them before they do, and then you get the refund. You can do this digitally through H&R Block and TurboTax. They make it really easy for you. Also, there were a number of guides on posing as a revenue agent. And what you'll do is, since you already have some PII, you can act like you actually already are an agent and know about this person and their account, and you're about to audit them. They get so scared that they give up all kinds of information because they're about to get audited. You can also demand payment from them and say, hey, if you pay this fee right up front to this account or this address, then I'll go ahead and stop the audit for you. People fall for this. Also, if the packet of information or identity that you get includes medical information or insurance information, which you can pay a little extra for, you can set up a fake clinic and start charging those identities. You can also collude with a pre-existing care provider. There are a number of people in Florida that are getting popped for this right now. And what you do is you provide the identities, and then you give a cut of the funds that you get back from the insurance to the care provider that you're working with. You can also sell these identities and insurance information to people who don't have insurance or are uncovered. Then they can pose as that person to get services. A lot of these IDs that come with medical information are also used to sidestep limits on certain prescriptions. So if you hit your limit on one identity, then you just go to the next identity and get all your pills, next identity, all your pills, until you have a stockpile. So now that we're starting to get some funds, it's still traceable to us. So how do we further obscure the flow of money? How do we start to launder this online? Well, this will move us into our next circle, our next magic quadrant, laundering. Which is more expensive for sure, and definitely rare. So some of the ways that you can launder your online funds. Fiverr, I'm sure a lot of you have heard of. Well, you set up two accounts. One is a service provider, and one is somebody who needs a service. You could make up whatever service you want. Reiki healing through the internet, I don't know. So you go ahead and take the ill-gotten money as a buyer, and you say, hey, yes, I really need some of that internet Reiki healing. And then since you're on both sides of the equation here, that money is going through Fiverr, and then you're getting paid out of Fiverr. So you can do the same exact scam through sites like Freelancer, Guru, or Upwork, where you pose as both the person offering the service and the person that needs the service. You can also just set up your own web shop, offering whatever doodads or stuff you call art that you want to sell. You can do this through Etsy. You can set up a Flint, Stripe, SparkPay, or Square account. But for those, you would need to attach a bank account usually. Well, not to worry. You can go back onto the darknet and buy bank accounts. Now, typically, you might not want to do that because, well, whoever's selling it to you probably still has access to that account. So what you can do is take that identity and set up a new bank account. Sometimes you don't even have to go in person. You can just set up a bank account online. Or you could just do it over the phone. Or I have also seen guides, which were really despicable, on how to find a junkie and pay them to set up an account for you. Some other ways that you can launder money, and I read guides on all of these things, is there are people who will sell you gold and silver bars for Bitcoin. It's at a really, really hefty premium, though. You're losing a lot of your money that way, but of course it's stolen money, so whatever. There are also a lot of gambling websites that will take Bitcoin. So what you do is you put the Bitcoin into the gambling website, you do a couple low-risk gambling. You let it sit there for a little while, and then when you cash out, you tell them, I don't want it in Bitcoin. I want it in a money order, or I want it in gift cards, or something like that. Yeah, so that's a whole nother talk. And yes, that is a huge problem. I think it was, I can't remember who it was, but one of the online World Series of Poker, they had a problem just 3 months ago where the top 2 players in their tournament were both bots. And they weren't able to contact them because there's nobody there behind it. So also, when we talked about before how people were using stolen credit cards to buy gift cards and then resell them at a discount, well, you can use your Bitcoins to buy these gift cards at a discount and then resell them to a legitimate site like Gift Card Granny. Also, many pawn shops now are buying gift cards, so that's another outlet. This one I thought was really clever. You can go online, and with Bitcoins, you can buy stolen Uber and Lyft user accounts. What you would then do is you would set up your own driver account, and you would do something called ghosting. And there's software that allows you to do this and trick the Uber and Lyft systems. And so what you would do is you would go through those stolen accounts and just charge them for rides that never occur. And so you get the money back out through Uber or Lyft through your driver account. You can also, again, at a premium, there are people that will sell you prepaid cards, like vanilla cards or green money pack cards for Bitcoin. And you can use those pretty much as debit or ATM cards anywhere. There's also another option for getting your Bitcoins into cash, and that is Bitcoin Direct cards. Now, the problem here is almost every single one of these Bitcoin cards are backed by a new, very small, not very well vetted Eastern European bank that just sprouted up recently. So really shady. And the next section of ways in which to launder money that I saw was really, really despicable. I call this the No Soul edition. And this is starting up charities. So bonus points if your charity website has SSL icons all over it, because then it's legit, right? So there were guides for starting your own church, for starting your own political action committee. Also bonus if you get your own 501. And what you would do is you would start up the front web page to tell people about this charity that you've created. And then on the back end, you would hook it up to something like Chimp or IATS or GiveWell. PayPal even has its own section for charities. Network for Good is another one that I saw guides for. And the reason why I say no soul is because almost every single one of these guides were really, really excited about the fact that not only are you laundering your money, but other people will give you money for free too. All right, so let's talk about some of the defenses for stopping this sort of crime, or at least making it a lot harder. If you're a general holder of personally identifiable information, which most businesses in the digital world are of some sort, of course, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but encrypt, not only in transit, but also at rest. Doing encryption with your SQL database is not going to make such a huge hit on your performance that it's not worth it. Also, asking for unneeded info. A lot of, especially startup businesses, they're like, oh, we can use this info in the future to monetize in this way. We can use this extra info that we're getting from these customers to maybe in the future add this feature. If you don't need it, don't keep it. It's a liability. Don't be a data hoarder. And also, anonymizing data is very, very hard. If you think you've anonymized the data and you're just giving out metadata, either to your partners or third parties, or you're reselling it, there are a lot of ways to turn that metadata back into personal information. If you are a company that has rewards programs, think about right off the bat putting rate controls and really paying attention to those rate controls for your logins. Instead of using the basic standby email address and password, try generating unique IDs for each of your users' login numbers so that you can't be hit by account reuse groups. Also, passphrases, please, please, please stop using 4-digit PINs. Two-factor or multi-factor authentication, very useful, important. Criminals, for the most part, don't want to deal with that shit. Anomaly detection. Start doing baseline analysis of your users and their accounts and how they're using their accounts. When you see that different geographies are starting to access their account features, when there's been changes to major information like the email address, main email address or physical shipping address to the account, loop back in with that customer and say, hey, did you actually mean to change this? Is this legitimate? Also, just looking at general account use. If the account is just buying when they've only been an account that sporadically uses their points, that's a red flag there, and start looking closer at that account. If you're someone who runs a point-of-sale system, of course, encryption, don't put it on the manager's computer in a text file. Securing hardware access is really important. You know, when you've got your receptionist at the front or whoever's going to be taking money, make sure that back of the computer is off limits to customers. For your web presence, web application firewalls are great, especially if you start to learn how to actually tune them and get what you want out of them. Using, of course, if you're using SQL databases, prepared statements and proper sanitization. And also regularly review your business logic, especially as you're adding new components to your web interface. It can cause your business logic over time not to operate in the way you expect it to and allow for other interesting ways to get what you shouldn't get as a customer. If you are giving out some form of loans, for God's sakes, require at least a conversation. It's even better if you require an in-person interview before the close of the loan. This will scare off the vast majority of fraudsters. If you see a VoIP number attached to a application for a loan, that's a red flag right there. Fraudsters love to use VoIPs, and they'll buy and sell different numbers and banks of numbers online. If you start to see a major influx from a particular geography that you didn't see a lot before, that should be a red flag that there's a concerted effort to perpetrate loan fraud there. Also, don't have a standard set of questions that you ask for every single loan. A lot of the guides that I saw for perpetrating loan fraud, what you're paying for in the guide is it walks you through every single question they'll ask and the answers that they want. So throwing curveball questions can make a big difference there. For everybody, all of these systems, training your employees, especially the ones that are going to be customer-facing, that are going to see the fraudsters before anybody else does, teach them about social engineering. Start doing some workshops with them. Teach them and keep them up to date on current trends in fraud and different ways that these guys are trying to weasel their way in. Also, really important and seriously lacking is having clear escalation paths for these tier 1 people that are on the front lines. When they start to feel weird about something, instead of being pressured into doing something they shouldn't, they should know that they can escalate to somebody above them right away, right when they feel that there's something off or something hinky. Now, for your personal protection, of course, it's easier to save your information into these websites for later use, but statistically, that information is going to be leaked at some point in time. So don't save your credit card information and all your personal information into these websites. Check for skimmers, as we talked before. Give it a little tug whenever you go to swipe your card. A lot of times, if there is an actual skimmer on it, it'll pop off. Don't take it home to research with it, because it looks really sketchy. especially on the cameras. So contact the authorities right away and say, hey, I found this credit card skimmer. Using VPNs in public places so you're not man-in-the-middle or given malicious content, having that injected. Also, when using a VPN, I highly recommend using no-split so you're not leaking a whole bunch of useful information. Also, this wasn't the case 5 to 10 years ago, but now there are some pretty legit credit and ID watch services. Lifeguard is not one of them. I know Lifeguard is right now on like a huge spree of marketing and of linking up with a whole bunch of other large name companies. It's still, I mean, they are right now in the middle of 2 class action lawsuits for not providing the protection they said they would. So yeah, don't use them. Also, your credentials. Don't reuse them across multiple websites. Also, rotate them often. So if there is a breach of one of those websites, your credentials are no longer useful. And one thing that can make this a lot easier instead of trying to store all these different logins and passwords in your head is using a good password vault. A lot of these vaults have options to periodically go through and rotate your credentials for you, and even to the point where it's a really long, complex password that you don't have to remember at all, that you don't even know. So even if you're tortured, you can't tell them. Your security questions. Now, it's really good when you can put in your own security questions and make up some just off-the-wall shit. But a lot of times, what you're stuck with is a drop-down menu. And what kind of questions do these drop-down menus usually have? Your favorite pet, your anniversary, your kid's birthday, stupid stuff like that that everybody has on their social media accounts. So when you're going to answer security questions, think, is this information that can be gleaned through my social media account? Also, keeping an adversarial mindset in general. Like, every time you go through a system to use it or to set up an account, think like a hacker. Say, all right, if I wanted to fuck with this part of the website or that part of the website, what would I do and how easy would it be? And if it actually does happen that you get your ID stolen or there's some fraud perpetrated against you, file a police report right away. That police report isn't going to do much for you in that moment, most likely. But what it does is it adds legitimacy and credence to your future claims about things happening to you based on that fraud. You can also go into your credit reporting agencies, the 3 main ones, and you can set a fraud alert on your credit. That way, when a fraudster goes and tries to take out a loan in your name or tries to buy a car, it'll get flagged, and the person who goes to run the credit check will say, hey, maybe this person isn't who they say they are. Also, of course, replace your cards as quickly as possible, and that's pretty easy to do. You just call your credit card company. So I know that I didn't cover all of the ways that ID fraud and cash outs happen in this day and age, and I know there are different ones out there and different ways to protect yourself. I definitely want to know about those. So please email me if you didn't see anything in this that you think is really interesting. Or that you ran into yourself. I'd really love to hear about that. That's bbrowntalks@gmail.com. And I'm open for questions and comments now. Yes? Right in the front. What's that? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's been happening since the 80s. Yep. And they're typically going through multiple nodes. Optiverting, yay. Any other freakers in here, by the way? Johnny, raise your hand. Right, That's a great point. But you probably also want to think about not using the same wrong answer over and over again, because once one of those gets popped, then they can just retry that. Yeah.
Security questions are really just other passwords used for your account. So just as you can't reuse a password, you can't use it, which means you put your security questions and answers in your password.
Yep.
Yeah.
In the far back there? Yeah, LifeLock, that's what I meant. I was just in the pool area and saw lifeguard on the sign, so I just... Yes. Yeah, that's a good point. Even when they do charge, it's not very much. Yeah. I'll definitely have to look that up. I didn't know there was two different levels. That's awesome. Yes.
You said not to use LifeLock. What's a good one maybe recommend?
Yeah, I'm not going to jump into that. I would do my own research, and one of the things you really want to look at is what people have said about them on BBB, a Better Business Bureau, and of course take that with a grain of salt. But also look and see what court cases they have had, and look and see who the CEO and the board members are, and what other companies they're involved with. If they're involved with other companies that have been shut down in the past for not doing the protection that they said they would, then that's a red flag there that they're probably not doing so hot in this round either. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, everybody.